Greetings, everyone, to another talk time. We've got an exciting topic ahead of us. First of all, though, I'd like to say hi to Teresa Saunders, my fellow colleague. How are you doing today, Teresa?
I'm doing well today. Thank you, Meredith. And yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. So what we have in store, we're going to talk about something I think a lot of people suffer with, and that's anxiety, and how as hypnotherapists we work with people who come in who want support with anxiety. Um, so what's the first thing that comes into your mind, Teresa, when you think about someone presenting with anxiety? What might they be feeling? What would be typical?
Typical would be like your heart racing, a fear of doing something. And sometimes I sort of find that people have that fear of feeling of anxious as well, you know?
Mm,
Um, that just becomes this ever sort of decreasing, well, not decreasing, evolving story of the worrying about the thought of becoming anxious over whatever it is that they feel anxious about.
yeah. So the greatest thing I think that happens is people get stuck in a worry that something may not go well. And that can be anxiety that causes someone to have a phobia or a fear of flying, whatever that might be. But it could also just be generalized throughout the day, their inability to feel that they can cope in some way. And that can manifest in maybe a fear of driving on the motorway or the fear of socializing. So a lot of people will present with these typical situations where they're finding it a bit hard, they're battling, and they're creating avoidance as a strategy to not feel so anxious. But then they get anxious about being anxious or anxious about not being able to do these things like everyone else does. So they overthink it, and that just kind of grinds them deeper and deeper into this terrible state of belief. And yeah, life gets a little bit hard.
Mm. So, Meredith, when a client comes to you with anxiety, how do you start your initial session to ensure they feel comfortable and understood?
Mm. Well, I think it's important to make sure that they have a chance to unpack a little bit about what's been going on, and also make sure that you are asking them, so what do you need for you in the session today that's going to be most important? So establishing an achievable goal for the session, and then making sure that the client really understands that you understand that that's what they want, and reassure them that that's what we're going to then do. Yeah, so that's probably how I would start a session.
So, would you talk to them about anxiety and try to normalize anxiety a bit with your client?
I think it's important. I think, as part of our central nervous system, we are going to have that trigger response in different situations. But I liken it to being like a smoke detector that's a little bit too titchy. We need to adjust it so it doesn't go off all the time and give a false alarm where we don't really need to be worrying about that. But unfortunately, the central nervous system keeps on getting that message that it is a problem. Mm.
Mm. Because anxiety is a normal human response, isn't it, to to stresses or perceived threats that we actually have
Mm.
on a day to day. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got our limbic system, and it will become triggered into the stress response rather quickly. And it could be a number of stimuli that a person may be experiencing externally, but most importantly, they can also set it off by what they're thinking about. So our own inner mind is quite powerful like that. And if we're hallucinating distress and we haven't even got there yet, but we're imagining how terrible it's going to be, we will start to naturally feel nervous. This is normal. If we've got the disaster channel playing in our mind, it's going to create stress hormones. So
Mm.
there's a part of the brain, the amygdala, which is watching the visual cortex, the movie of the mind. And if you've got the negative movie on, that can be a problem. So it's really getting the client to understand that they are in charge of which movie is playing. That just because the first movie that is familiar started playing doesn't mean they can't change the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I've heard about these the four Fs, the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. Can you explain a little bit about that to us a little bit more, and
Mm.
if you actually use that within your session?
Well, definitely the fight, flight, freeze. And we were talking the other day, and I thought, wow, I never knew about the fall. So I might leave you to explain that fourth one. But generally, the fight, flight, freeze is we want to fight the threat. So our central nervous system will fire up our muscles so we can fight or fly, get out of there quickly. And some people, though, freeze, so they do nothing. They might faint, for example. So this is where understanding the stress response when it goes off is actually a really good survival instinct. Because if we didn't have that, we'd be in problem. Well, we might be in danger if a wild animal were to start running after us and we didn't have that natural stress response. But in our modern world, obviously, we don't have that many wild animals coming at us, but we certainly have stressful situation and people that might feel threatening. So if we are imagining in our mind a threatening scenario, we can definitely be triggering the fight, flight, freeze response. So on that note, do you want to share what that fourth one is about?
Off with fawn. The fawn response really involves attempting us to appease or placitate the threat in order to avoid harm. It could include behaviours such as compliance, submission, or trying to please the aggressor in hopes of reducing the threat or the danger.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
I can imagine a lot of people who are going through abusive situations that even might be bullying at work or at home, they're not in a happy relationship or perhaps, with even their parents or relatives or friends, they might fall into that category where they're bargaining, they're kind of trying to appease things.
they go into that submissive state just to, as a protection, because
Mm.
the responses, as you've said, are a deeply ingrained survival mechanism that have evolved over time to help us respond to potential threats. And we need, they've adapted, and our brain goes into like overdrive sometimes as well for those threats now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what is important is that we have two systems, and this is something that I do explain to my clients when they come in. We've got the sympathetic nervous system and then the parasympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system is sympathetic to the threat. Our parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest, all is well, I'm happy and safe system. Now, if someone gets really, really nervous and the stress response goes off, it's very common that someone might need to go to the toilet more often, or maybe even feel sick to their stomach where they might even vomit. So, there's a lot of things that happen with our actual full system when it goes into stress. We definitely feel an elevation of the heart rate. And we also might find our saliva dries up. So we might feel really thirsty. We even might feel an elevation of heat. So sweaty palms and sort of get a little bit hot and sticky. So this is all our central nervous system in our stress response. Now, when we can switch off that stress response, then we want to be seeing the opposite occurs. We want to see the digestive system coming back online, and we're feeling like our heart rate's gone back down to a normal pace. We're not feeling that hotness anymore. We're cooling off. We're able to rest and recover, and we feel much better in ourselves. But a lot of times people go into this habit of worry where their stress response is on almost all the time, where they're not sleeping well. And then because they haven't slept well, they're not rested, and then they're not making great executive decisions, and then they're becoming reactionary, and the cycle goes on. So when I'm dealing with a lot of my clients, it really is going, what is their habit of stress? What is their trigger? What is their mindset? What is their belief? So as a practitioner, these are things that I want to understand about what's going on for the client.
Hmm. So is there any particular techniques that you'd use to help your clients recognize that positive intention behind their anxiety, such as their brain trying to protect them?
100%. Look, I think it's important that the brain be acknowledged also for its good work. And this is where we might even go into parts and thank that part for doing such an amazing job, but reassign it potentially to working in a slightly different way so that the person doesn't have to continue experiencing that level of anxiety or stress. So, you know, as a hypnotherapist, we're wanting to reprogram to a degree that person's stress response, but we also need to acknowledge all the great times it has potentially in the past kept that client safe. But that past may be haunting them. So it might have kind of caused them to see a pattern of that could happen again, but actually they're now in a very safe environment, or they're in a safe workplace, or whatever that is, and they actually have nothing to worry about. Then again, they could be in a very volatile situation. So it's recognizing that and working with them about strategies on how they can create whatever steps might need to happen for them to exit that situation if that's what they need to do. Because, you know, it seems simple when it's not you to go, well, just leave, you know, get another job. But if someone's been in a job for 15 years, it's really intimidating to go out there. And if their self-esteem has been battered and bruised because they've been maybe in a workplace stress scenario for a long time and they're a bit burnt out, then that can be a huge step of faith for them to take. So I think as a therapist, we've got to be the cheerleader, you know, help them to plant that seed of hope and belief in themselves that things can get better.
Definitely, yeah. So because we're sort of putting out these videos for people to get a little bit of a taste of hypnotherapy and how it can help different things, and this week our topic is obviously anxiety, are you able to share with us an example of relaxation or visualization techniques perhaps that you use to help with an anxious client to feel more at ease? Not obviously not a full session, but just a little snippet to give people an idea of what that would actually mean.
Yeah. So I'd like to, I guess, introduce the idea of breathing correctly. There was a wonderful study done through Stanford University a couple of years back. Andrew Huberman, a couple of people out there probably have heard of him. He's a neuroscientist and he's a lecturer at Stanford University. And he's a great believer in sharing out to the world some of these scientific discoveries to help humanity. So I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's done some incredible things to advance, you know, general understandings about how things work. They did the sleep study, and they were looking at really effective ways to calm the farm, to switch off the sympathetic nervous system and switch back on the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system. Because, of course, when people are ruminating and they can't sleep well, their mind's so busy, they need to calm down so they can actually go to sleep. So this was something that they were observing is the stress response that happens when people get really upset. They start to hyperventilate, but they don't keep hyperventilating. They start to reset themselves. And if you've ever watched someone cry and then kind of calm down, or even done this yourself, I demonstrate this to my clients. I say, look, I'm going to demonstrate calming down. It looks like this. You know, you've had a big old cry and you're all upset, and it's in, out, in, out. Now, through that observation, they thought, what if we were to get this group of people to breathe in a similar way? So they got them to breathe in twice in the nostrils, in, and then slowly out, like a long sigh, until there's nothing else left. And then you go in, and then slowly sigh it out. Even after 2 rounds, it showed that it was actually calming the heart rate down. It was sending the signal to the central nervous system to relax. So it was actually the most effective breathing technique out of all of the different techniques that have been around, like box breathing and so on. It is the most effective one. And ever since I learned that, I've been teaching it to my clients, and I'm actually using it in the induction for the hypnotherapy. So as I invite a person to land, I invite them to take a deep breath, and then as they sigh it out, just letting their eyes close. And then just take another deep breath and then sigh it out. I'm just doing that 3 times. And then I get them to land into their body, just feeling the space underneath them, noticing that movement of the breath, the coolness of the inhalation and the warmth of the exhalation. And then I invite them to just breathe in twice in a row through their nostrils and slowly sigh it out through the mouth, and just do it about 3 to 5 rounds, whatever feels right. And just notice as you exhale, just going deeper and deeper into hypnosis, into that wonderful state where you're open to suggestion and that anything is possible, where you're engaging your major magic and wonderful mind, and you're allowing yourself to reinforce positive ideas and suggestions that you can act upon easily when it's time. So that's the kind of thing that I might journey someone into in a hypnotic space. Yeah, so that's a little teaser, I guess, of how I might support utilizing the breath and teaching that to a client, and then using that later into the induction.
Mm. And would you give your clients any advice for managing anxiety between your sessions as well?
Mm. So definitely, if I do a hypnosis session, I would like them to listen to that once a day until they return. And that's really useful because it's going to compound some positive ideas and suggestions to them. The other one is the breathing 4 times a day, just practicing that breathing technique, or when and if they need it. So when you're thinking about someone's really uptight, um, if you can get them to practice it when they're not uptight, they're more likely to remember to use it when they get uptight. So they become entrenched into a good habit of calming themselves and knowing what calm feels like. So that's
Mm.
something that I definitely task my clients often to do. The
And
other
this
one is reframing and you know, how they're talking to themselves.
mm. I was just going to say with the factor of the breathing, that something is a quick handy tool that you actually have. So if it's something like publicly talking or talking to a group of people, it's something that you can use quick and effectively at hand
Mm.
that nobody can see, but
Mm.
it works.
It really does. It's amazing the turnaround in their state of being when they actually practice the breath. Now, if, for example, you teach that to your client and there was no effect, go check in and see whether they're doing it correctly, because they might have been nervous when you taught them and they may not have remembered the actual instruction.
My understanding of that, and correct me if I'm incorrect, Meredith, is that what you actually need to do is your in breath, although we're doing 2, is shorter than the outward breath.
Yes.
That to
So
work.
in, slowly out, as long as it takes to let go of all the air. So definitely you want to do that. If someone is doing equal in and out, and they're not really releasing the breath properly, they haven't done the sigh properly. So they're not letting their central nervous system know that it's okay to let go.
Mm. And we naturally do that, like if you've been really sobbing and that sort of thing, like you were saying before, it's a natural response to calm ourselves back down. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. And look, why not utilize it? This is what science, the good side, is really about, the observation of how things, things work. And now that we know that that's something that really is effective, it's been measured, it's literally been clinically studied, it's great to use. So, combining that into hypnosis and into the induction and even reinforcing it later as a positive dress rehearsal within that hypnotic journey can be really effective for a client who is suffering.
Mm.
What do you think, Teresa, about teaching a client how to relax in a hypnotic session and who has been suffering from anxiety for quite some time?
Oh, I think it's extremely important, and the breath is one of the ways that I also work with getting clients to relax, making sure that you've got that rapport with them as well.
Mm.
To begin with, because if you haven't got rapport, then they're not going to relax very well, let alone in your own seat, let alone throughout a session. Um, and also explain to them and make sure they understand that it's a normal response anxiety. It really is a normal response to something, and it's just that our body's gone on overdrive and it's trying to protect us a little bit too much, and that we can change that.
Mm. And when we change the channel in the movie theatre of the mind, it definitely helps. And if someone has been experiencing anxiety and can actually see how they've amped it up using their very own imagination, it's nice to remind that person that that's how powerful they are. So if they can do that to a negative effect, they can also equally do that to a positive effect. So they can imagine success instead of distress. They can imagine themselves being calm and confident instead of sort of wound up and apprehensive.
That's right. And always finishing on the empowering notes, that they don't go away feeling that they've been judged or done something wrong to initially get into that state.
Yes, yeah. And on the empowering note too, a lot of times, let's say you've got someone who's really nervous about public speaking and they say, oh, I'm going to be calm, I'm going to be relaxed, I'm going to remember my words, I'm going to really ace this. Not like before when I used to get really nervous and lose my speech, and oh yeah, I used to get really anxious and get all red, and oh gee, that was embarrassing. Now what happens is there's like ruh, ruh, ruh. They've gone into channel doomsday. So it's important to invite the client to understand, even in their mind, if they started off with a accidental negative, to end on a highlight, like how they would like it to be from now on. I call it the doing script, how you want to do things from now
Mhm.
on, and make it shiny and positive. So you're using positive words to describe the new state that you want. So instead of saying, I'm not going to get nervous, you say, I'm going to feel really what we call confident and calm. So we're using the right words that elicits the right emotion. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and even using the fact of, yeah, in the past, I was nervous and anxious when I was going to talk, but now I'm getting better and better at being more and more confident in each and every way.
Mm. Because the amygdala doesn't understand time. So there's that part of your brain that's watching everything and it believes everything is right now. So when we reframe it into, yeah, I had been, I was, I used to, now I'm starting to, choosing to, becoming, and you're really reinforcing that positive moving forward from here, you're teaching the amygdala what program to run. Whereas if we get stuck in the loop of the past, like, oh, I always seem to get nervous when, and you're projecting into the future something that you don't want anymore, but you're accidentally building it. So of course, when you hit that moment, what do? You run the familiar pattern. So it is important as hypnotherapists to understand the art of suggestion and the art of putting things in the past and making sure that you're really anchoring that person from now on. You are in that positive way. Yeah,
Mm. I'm flipping this story.
absolutely. Is there anything else that comes to mind when you're thinking about anxious clients that you have come across that you'd like to maybe share with people?
I think one of the biggest things is that people are often embarrassed about how anxious they are, because they know rationally it's something that it shouldn't happen to them. And so they sort of blow it out of proportion. So yeah, I think I coming back again to normalizing that behavior,
mm,
and allowing your clients to know that it's okay. You're not going to be judged for what you're going to bring up into this session.
mm.
Um, and you can change that. You've come here with that problem. You've acknowledged that you've got the issue of being anxious. So let's flip your story. Let's make it positive. Let's turn it
Yeah.
around.
I had a client actually earlier today who is doing Aikido, and she's practicing certain types of rolls, and she finds it tricky to roll to one side versus the other side. And she gets all up in her head about it. And one of her instructors saw her roll on the other side and came up and said, "Oh, that was really great." And she automatically said something negative as a response. And
Mm,
then she thought, "Oh, why do I keep on doing that?" And, no one else is looking and no one else cares. And actually, why do I keep on putting myself down and worrying what other people think? So it was a really good breakthrough for her to observe um, how she responded to a positive comment comment about something she was really worried about. And she wasn't even able to say just thank you. She just said, "Oh well, I'm not really that good." Da, da, da. So she came in and rebutted the positive.
mm,
But that was a great aha moment for her. And we talked about, as soon as you're aware that you've done something like that, you have a choice to change it. And you can invite yourself to dress rehearse, how do I want to respond to a positive comment? How do I want to imagine that, actually people don't care. The only person that really cares about how good I'm doing ultimately is me. So, other people, they just care about how they're doing. That's actually really the truth. So she started to become more aware of that and wanted to sort of shrink it back into perspective. Yeah, so the work that we do is kind of cool because you see people having those aha moments and then gaining control over them.
yeah.
Mm,
And I think another one is like exposing people to something, taking small steps. If it's like public speaking, so you did sensitize them and you have like them just imagine them talking to a small group of perhaps friends or family and building up confidence like that to get into the larger audience type
mm.
so that that helps reduce the overall anxiety and response to the situation.
With that in mind, actually, one of the things I come across a lot are people saying, "Oh, I'm not sure whether I'll be able to come up with something on the spot." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me, when was the last time someone bumped into you in the middle of the hallway or somewhere at work and asked you a spontaneous question, you had the answer straight away?" She said, "Oh, all the time." I said, "Well, why wouldn't you be able to do that on a stage?" Like, if you didn't know, if you genuinely didn't know, it's intelligent to say, "Well, that's a really good question. I'd have to think about that."
Mm. And
You
I
don't
think
always have to come up with the answer to everything.
no, and I think that's where being human, we put an added expectation on ourselves, or we believe society puts that expectation on us that we should know it all. We
Mm,
should be able to do it.
mm.
Mm. And
So it
there's
is
where your
interesting.
anxiety.
Yeah, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, and there's where the anxiety begins because society or ourselves expect that we should be able to do it
Mm.
perfectly.
We also could have the echo of when we're at school and someone's made fun of us, or a teacher's belittled you, or someone who is someone you look up to actually has kind of said something about your abilities that isn't so flattering. And you take it on board like a sponge. And often people are carrying these crippling beliefs around until adulthood, and they're well beyond that stage, but they still see themselves as if they're still back there. So a lot of people are quite capable and confident, have achieved incredible things, but they've never acknowledged it. It's almost like their base core belief still believes they're back at being 8 or 7 or something, and not being able to be very good at certain things. Whereas actually, if you look at the evidence, often there's lots of evidence to say that that is not true at all.
No, it only takes, like you say, one negative word sometimes from somebody way back in the past
Mm.
that we actually keep on ruminating over again and again and making that bigger and bigger and out of proportion to what it actually was intended or said so at the time.
Mm, yeah. So, when we're kind of looking at working with anxiety, people are going to come in with a variety of issues that is causing them anxiety. And they might be suffering from lack of sleep, like they're really tossing and turning, or they could have the OCD kind of checking and rechecking and so on, the lock or the different things that happen when people get into the anxiety OCD cycle. It could be a number of things that people are doing. They might be chewing their nails off or let's say drinking too much because they're medicating their social anxiety or something else. So people are presenting with anxiety symptoms that have manifested in different areas of their life, and it's very varied. So, listening to your client, what's really going on here? And are there other times that they felt like this in the past? Where might it be stemming from? Is there a base core belief that could be part and parcel of this cycle that they're in? Do we need to diminish that? Do we need to do inner child work or regression in some way? Do we need to do parts, or do we need to future pace them and in an empowering way? So there's many things that we can do with an anxious client that presents with whatever it is that they're finding they're struggling with. Yeah.
Mm.
What do you think about that, Teresa?
I think I've said this time and time again, is that you don't foresee what you're going to be doing with your session with the client. You wait until you speak with your client and it evolves through that conversation at the beginning, and perhaps even through the session it could change tact because it might not be working, or you pick up on something else that actually needs to be addressed. So I
Mm,
think that's really important, Meredith. Yeah.
yeah. Awesome. So looking at the time, it's time to sort of sew things up. And if anyone out there really wants to, I guess, find out more about hypnotherapy, we're back here weekly just talking about different things to do with hypnosis and how we work with clients. So tune in, subscribe and like and all of that stuff. But yeah, is there anything else you would like to say?
I was going to say, yeah. And if you have a specific question or topic that you'd like us to talk on, then please do drop us a line, either add a comment to this or contact us via the school's website, because we'd be more than happy to discuss that on one of our talk time sessions.
Hmm. And look, if anyone is interested in training to become a hypnotherapist, please, look up the site, have a look at what we have to offer. It is online and available for people no matter where you live. I have sessions that are live sessions that we do on a regular basis to help you through each module, along with master classes that we do as well. So, there's lots of resources and information that you can gain over that journey of learning. So it's a full diploma of clinical hypnotherapy that we offer. So please visit their website www.nzach.ac.nz. The details are below if you're watching this on YouTube, but if you're tuning in as a podcast, just look up our school and you can find out more about what it all entails. So look, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of Talk Time, where we talk about all sorts of things to do with hypnosis. So thank you, Teresa, for coming along again and having a chat.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you everybody for listening in. And I look forward to speaking to you next week.
Cool. Bye, everyone.
Bye.